The Sawyer Mini is the most versatile personal filtration system available. It's a perfect solution for backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing, scouting, international travel, and emergency preparedness. At a mere 2 ounces, the Mini fits in the palm of your hand and can filter up to 100,000 gallons of water from any freshwater lake, river, or stream. The Sawyer Mini has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size. It was tested to 10 million parts of bacteria and 1 million parts of protozoa without a single breakthrough. This is the highest level filters can be tested to, so we're confident these are the highest rates of filtration available.
And we're back. And of course, got my co-host John Wheaton beside me, but we've got 2 special guests tonight, General Paul Vallely and Captain Matthew Newgent, both from the MacArthur Society and both storied military careers. General, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. I know you've been on our show before, but I don't want to do you any disservices. And then, Matt, you can do the same.
Well, thank you, Chris. Happy to be back with you. Matthew and I have some great information to put out to the American people that we've studied in detail, analyzed, and we're going to talk about that. Just introduce myself, 32 years retired, U.S. Army, 20 years in Special Ops. My last job was Deputy Commanding General U.S. Army Pacific, based out of Honolulu, Hawaii. Then I was with Fox News as their lead military analyst for 8 years, 1 week after 9/11, and then about 8 or 9 years thereafter. So, but the Stand Up America Foundation was formed by Lieutenant General McInerney and I in 2007. Our website is standupamericaus.org. Everybody can go there. We have a publication department. We publish a lot of books, tying all the dots together so people in America can understand what's going on. And we were very, very active during the campaign to elect President Trump. So that's sort of an overview, Chris, and let me pass it to Matt now.
Well, Matthew, before you go, I want to make sure that our audience really understands the general. So feel free to correct me either one. But my understanding is, General, you were the first Spec Ops soldier to ever get to the level of a general, and that you were the first commander of SOCOM. Is that correct?
Well, no, I was part of SOCOM. Actually, I was proposed by President Reagan to be the first Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations in 1988. There were 2 of us up for that job. And of course, I was a brigadier at the time, but they gave it to a State Department guy named White, who came from Cambodia, had no idea about special ops, but he had the political tie-ins to Carlucci, who was the defense chief then. So he got the nod, lasted about a year, and then I went on to other things. But anyhow, I helped set up SOCOM with 4 other retired active duty generals at the time to form that for President Reagan.
So, Matthew, would it be safe to say that the general is a prolific writer?
Oh, yeah.
The guy never runs out of energy. He's 29 years old with about 56 years experience, right? So, and
85 this week, Chris.
Happy birthday, Paul.
56 years. Yes, happy birthday.
Yeah, Chris, like you said, every couple months he's like, Matt, I wrote a new book. What? I'm not kidding you. And it's amazing. Like you said, Chris, look at that. And I'm thrilled and honored to know him. And is it okay, Chris, if I can continue?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So my background is I'm a West Point grad, but before that, I was actually enlisted in military intelligence. I majored in Russian with a minor in systems engineering, graduated from West Point in 1996. I was an engineer officer. I served at Fort Bragg, went to a lot of cool schools, airborne, ranger, sapper, got out before 9/11. So my brothers and sisters in armed, carried that great burden for me, which I appreciate. They called me back to just update my records, but that's it. Got into business. And then in 2020, our times called me back when the world went crazy. And I've been on this path since about 2020. And about a year and a half ago, Paul, General Vallely here, who's a visionary man, he said, West Point needs an alumni society, basically to be a watchdog. And, there are already great alumni societies out there, but none for West Point. And he said, we should call it, we had some, talking, and he suggested the idea of the MacArthur Society West Point graduates. And what I've come to learn, when Paul says this is a good idea, it's a great idea. And MacArthur Society, we're the ones that broke the story about West Point removing duty, honor, country from the mission statement. From the mission statement, not the motto, still, but from the mission statement, which is mind-blowing. Okay. And we've had some other big, jumps too. But so that's my background. West Point, listed before that, business, and then back in the fight in 2020. More recently, I'm on the board of MacArthur Society, vice president for relations. I do a lot of interviews and podcasts, and I pick up crumbs off of from Paul Vallely and the other generals there. It's amazing. But we'll talk more about that, because MacArthur Society, believe it or not, we have other great visionary leaders who are in the, there's no one like Paul Vallely, okay, but they're similar like him.
Well, Matthew, I was just going to say, I didn't come up with MacArthur Society. I came up with some names. Another member recommended that to me. Yeah. I said, you got it. That's it. So that's why we went with the MacArthur Society. After the famous General Douglas MacArthur, one of the greatest generals in the world.
Amen to that. So since the last time we spoke, I've kind of changed my political leanings a little bit, and I've now come out in full support of DEI. And I know that you guys are against that, MacArthur Society.
Good for you, Chris. You got sucked in.
Well, I was talking to Tom Holman, and he told me that it stands for deport every illegal. And
yeah, there you go.
I said, you know what, I can get behind that. So we're actually seeing a new acronym out there just recently. Right. It's been in use for a while, but MEI, I don't know if y'all have heard of it. Merit, Excellence, and Intelligence. And there are actually some very large companies who went deep down the DEI road and have ditched it, and they're coming out with MEI now, which, thank God, none too soon. But I want to mention a couple things. Number one, if people want to follow along with any of our episodes, go to patreon.com/survivaldispatch. Free membership. You get the brief that actually the four of us are going off of right now and every other episode. So that way, if you want to go watch videos that are extended, read more articles, it's all there. It's like a curated daily newspaper that John and I use to conduct these. The other thing is, yes, we're aware of Joe Biden pardoning Hunter Biden. We may or may not have time to discuss that tonight, but if we don't discuss it tonight, we'll discuss it tomorrow night, because the topic at hand tonight is really interesting to me. So the full spectrum of war, Matthew and the general can explain it way better than I can, but we've been engaged in this asymmetric war. Our audience has heard me mention this many, many times, as far as the damage that's been done to our country by our allies. And General, just a quick question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Somebody made a comment, one of our guests, and I don't recall who it was, maybe John might recall, but they basically said that the Chinese started this asymmetrical warfare because they knew if they landed on North America, on our land, that they could never beat us in a kinetic war here. So they had to find other ways to beat us. And I'm assuming that's kind of the beginning of this kind of unusual warfare.
Yeah, certainly. They did not want to take on the American with all the Americans that are armed and ready to fight. And so that's why they went to this new generational type of warfare, which a lot has to do with psychological operations as well. That's a very big part of it, and they're very good at it, as you know, as well as the Russians. And so with that, they developed, and I guess Matthew will explain it in detail, in the late 90s, two Chinese officers developed this new forward-looking strategy for China. And boy, they're executing it, and they've done well. They're very smart. You cannot take a backseat to the Chinese thinking. They're very clever and very smart, and they know the mind war. They know how to do strategic psychological operations. And that's what we're going to talk about.
So a specific question for you, just to maybe clear up some misconceptions. But I've read a couple articles. I haven't had the opportunity to ask you if they were accurate or not, where they claim that the whole QAnon stuff was actually started by us for psychological warfare.
Right.
Whereas today, if you mention anything Q, people automatically assume that you're some far right wing, crackpot
Right.
conspiracy theorist. Can you tell us what the background is? That number one, was it a legitimate effort on our part militarily, and is it still going, or can you comment?
Well, I've been actually highlighted out, I should say, as starting all that and be the head of it, which I was not. The Army of Northern Virginia was a unit based out of Fort Belvoir, Florida, of special ops guys primarily. And the best that I know, a number of them got involved and formed this QAnon to really be able to provide information from out of the closet out to the American people. And so that's QAnon. But I didn't form it. I wasn't part of it. I didn't lead it. But it was a real thing at the time. I mean, they came out with some very good hard information and intelligence. And I still to today don't know who specifically by name was behind it, other than they said it was the Northern Confederacy of the Northern Line. I'm trying to think of the name. It's been so long now. Army of the Northern Virginia out of Fort Belvoir. Anyhow.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that, General. I'm, if nothing else, I appreciate knowing that it really was a thing at one point in time, and that it's not just the realm of conspiracy. So then my question to you, Matthew, is the General's already mentioned a couple of times psychological warfare.
Yeah.
Give us some examples of that.
Okay, that's great. So as I mentioned, I am prior service enlisted, and this will give you some idea of how to categorize everything. And I think once you guys get it, your audience, they're already forward thinking in terms of getting the truth. A lot of your audience, they're first responders or they're military or veterans, so they'll get this. First thing I say when I explain this is two things. Number one, you have to see the big picture through a military lens, okay? Because, all of us have served. Chris, you were, first responder for a couple of years. This will make a lot of sense to you. There are bad guys out there. There are people that hate us, hate our country. They don't want us to have free speech or the free exercise of religion. They don't want us to have, the Second Amendment. They don't like the right to be prosperous. They hate our Judeo-Christian heritage, okay? They don't like us. That said, just like Paul said, our adversaries are very smart, they're patient, and they're ruthless, okay? The second thing is when you look at warfare, most Americans and our Department of Defense thinks of warfare primarily through the lens of kinetic warfare, okay? Paul mentioned, these different types of warfare. You did too, Chris. We can put it all into what's called a spectrum of warfare. Now, that said, and I'll get to my third point in a minute when I tell you this story. So my MOS, military occupational specialty, when I was enlisted was a 98 Golf military intelligence. I had basically two parts of my job. One was electronic warfare. I would break into frequencies. Nothing here classified. The other part was I learned a foreign language, okay? At the time, it was Czech. They were occupied by the Soviet Union. Well, there was a story we all passed around about this specialist, E4, not necessarily a high rank, but someone, been in long enough to be good at their job as a 98 Golf, military intelligence type of person. And they were doing this big, warfighter exercise in Hohenfels, Germany. You got your force and the OP4, the opposing forces. And what he did was, he broke into the frequency, the communication of the OP4, and he fooled a squad to go to chow. Now you think that's not a big deal. Well, this is what he did. First of all, he watched them a couple days. He figured out what they were doing. He figured out the challenge and password every single day. And then he got in their frequencies. Hey, you guys move to this grid for chow. And they gave him the challenge and password. He had it. Well, they remembered his voice, they remembered his commands, and he was right. Well, over the course of the exercise, he figured out where the entire battalion was, and he moved them in a relatively small area. So he reported that to his platoon leader, said, "Sir, I think I've got the battalion in a small area." The platoon leader looked at his work and said, "You sure did. we're calling it an artillery strike. Sure enough, so a specialist E4 almost single-handedly destroyed an infantry battalion, obviously with the help of good platoon leaders and, good comms and artillery. But what that demonstrates is non-kinetic warfare and kinetic warfare. He subverted them, was fooling them to think they were working for their own ends, but they were just walking into the death trap. And here's another thing. This is the big picture. The pretext, the preview, okay, for kinetic warfare is non-kinetic warfare, okay? Now, so that said, if you understand and see this through a military lens, you'll understand the third point. Wokeness is warfare. I'll say that again. Wokeness is warfare. Now, it took us a while to get this because, like you said, Chris, we're working against ourselves. Now, MacArthur Society is a nonpartisan organization. We deal with, obviously, political issues. We have members of both parties. We're concerned about strong national defense. Well, all three service academies, they have diversity and inclusion type minors. I mean, you got to be kidding me. So we asked ourselves, what is this called when we're attacking ourselves? We don't know the word for it. And there's this Major General retired, is John Rusty Casey. And it's interesting that you mentioned these two, Chinese officers, and they actually wrote a book. Here it is, Unrestricted Warfare. Unrestricted Warfare is written back in the 90s, actually, by Liang and Xiangshui. I probably mispronounced that. But part of this general's grooming was to go to different speaking events and lectures. And one of these such lectures was in China, given by two officers from the PLA, People's Liberation Army, members of the CCP, okay, Chinese Communist Party, okay. Now, the General, Casey can't necessarily say it could, whether it was not the authors of Unrestricted Warfare, but they certainly sounded like, because what they told him, imagine big, stuffed chairs and a bunch of generals, high-ranking officers from the United States and obviously from China. And these two officers, gentlemen, said, we know how we're going to beat the United States, and you won't even see it coming. And like Paul said, what we are experiencing here, all this wokeness, and it just, shot after shot against the United States. Now that we know, okay, this concept of spectrum of war, that, non-kinetic warfare is warfare and wokeness is warfare, that's kind of a new development for all of us.
Yeah, and also, Matt, these generals and admirals in our Pentagon today, 3 and 4 stars, all bought off on it, including the civilian, the chief or the head of our Defense Department, all the civilian appointees, they all bought off on it.
So the obvious question is, and I'll let John take it from here, but for both of you, General and Matthew, why? Why did they sign off on it? Because my opinion has been, John will tell you, I've been saying this for a while now, I'm convinced that our government up until now has been under the direct control of our enemies, because I can't square all of these decisions any other way. General, why would they sign off on that? Why would they?
Because they convinced the Manchurian candidate, Obama. They set him up. That's where it emanated from. Then infected the generals and admirals that he selected early on, because he scorched about 120 senior officers out of the military. The millies then came and he became the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. So it was always planned, like Matthew's explaining. And once they plant that in there, but it was all driven by Obama, then Biden, then to the Defense Department and all the other agencies around, and then to the universities.
So, John, I know you got some questions, but I'm going to back up ever so briefly. This scenario that Matthew was describing, where they essentially triangulated those guys by their comms, and then, they could hit them with mortars and stuff. The way I interpret that as a non-military guy, we don't need you Air Force guys. That's what I heard Matthew say.
JTAC, we need the Air Force guys. We need the
JTAC, right? What JTAC?
Yeah. I bet an A-10 could have done plenty of damage to that battalion.
Oh, yeah. Love those hogs, man. Oh, the A-10s.
No, so To follow up on Chris's question of why, what is the end game of all this? What is the outcome? Because when I look at this stuff, I'm going to preface it with this. When I look at this stuff, I think there's somebody behind all of this, and what is their end game here? Because I don't know, and maybe I'm relying too much on too many spy movies that I've seen throughout my lifetime, but there's always somebody that ends up getting thrown to the wolves, for lack of a better term. What is the end game, and who is the end game for?
Paul, you want to take this?
Well, no, go ahead, Matt. You know what the end game is from the Chinese officers to dominate and take control globally.
Yep, that's right.
Economically and militarily, and that's what they're up to. And to basically defang the United States as the leading patriotic country, freedom-loving country of America, and dismantle us.
Yeah.
So essentially communism.
Well,
yeah.
There are four main. This is from strong intelligence sources, people who brief the. In fact, I sent this information to you, Chris. Look at unrestrainedanalytics.org. Okay, this guy was in the J2, and he briefed the the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and so he actually told them what would happen in Afghanistan and the Middle East, and they fired him. And later on, they said everything that you said, would happen happened. Okay, and then they hired him back. So, but to answer your question, John, I'll make it a spectrum. Okay, because there are different parties that want a piece of flesh from the United States. Now, this is from Stephen Coughlin of unrestrainedanalytics.org. There are four main adversaries of the United States. Number one is the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, China. Number two is the Islamic Brotherhood. Okay. Number three is the Red-Green Alliance, which is basically the alliance between the Islamic Brotherhood and the radical left. Okay. And the fourth is the oligarchy. The oligarchy, and it has many names. That's the nomenclature that Coughlin uses, from unconstrained analytics. What that basically is, it has many names. Dan Bongino calls it the blob. The Uniparty. That's what
Patel calls it too.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So the Uniparty. So that said, now some of those people, some of them, the United States is nothing more than a business. That's all that it is. They have zero regard for American citizens. All we are, it's like the Matrix, okay? And maybe that's a little freaky for somebody, but all we are is a battery to fuel their ambition. Now, another one is competing interest, meaning the Chinese Communist Party. Like Paul said in the book, Unrestricted Warfare, that is their model for basically overpowering the United States and becoming the world superpower, okay? The Islamic Brotherhood, they have, values that run, contradictory to America's Judeo-Christian heritage. Okay. And the oligarchy, the blob, whatever you want to call it, the Uniparty, they want power. It's very
They're the globalists, Matthew. They're the globalist financial guys.
Thank you. The globalists too. And they would fall into that category of the United. Yes, it's the money.
Economic Forum, United Nations.
There you go.
They're all part of that globalist action. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had people tell me, they said, Matthew, you know what the United States is? I'm like, I'll tell you what the United States is. And he did with the finger to the thumb. He says, like money. It's for some people, all the United States to them is a business. It's not people. It's just a business. And it made me think about it. Okay, and this is a high level player. Okay. So that said, I mean, we're on the right track because we actually care about citizens. We love our country. We have our faith. And so we're the ones who are going to save it. And we're doing what engaged citizens are supposed to do. But John, to answer your question, there are many. Okay. But I trust those four from a credible source. Thank you, Chris, for showing that his page. And it's pretty solid. Does that answer your question, John?
It does. So I'm interested in this conglomeration of enemies that we have, because the one that doesn't fit in my mind is the Muslim Brotherhood.
The Islamic Brotherhood?
Or Islamic Brotherhood, not Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood is actually a terrorist organization. But Islamic Brotherhood, because historically they have been all about just spreading a radical religion across the world.
Okay.
Since
That's an excellent question. So what you're talking about, and I'll speak to that a little bit. Paul could probably speak more, but what the Islamic Brotherhood is doing, and you just spoke of it, is they are executing non-kinetic warfare on the SOW spectrum of warfare. Now you've got the kind of stereotypical jihadis, jihadists who are sometimes they're called Muslimists or Islamists, the extreme. I think all of us have friends who are Muslim who are great people. Okay, right. I do, but there's some extremists, obviously. And so you've got both spectrums, the extremists and the Islamic Brotherhood. Those are the ones that go to U.S. schools, go to schools in England, throw on a suit and tie, and become part of the Obama administration and Biden administration. And they basically, encourage and get legislation and executive orders passed that supports their agenda. Now think about it. Non-kinetic warfare, they're able to get an entire military moved out of a region. They're able to force an entire military to restrict their kinetic warfare via ROE, rules of engagement. So they're not dumb.
No.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. It's just interesting because I'm a history nut. So I go back to, even, in the 6th and 7th century when when the caliphate was moving. I mean, basically people don't realize this, but the Middle East used to be a Christian area back, if you go back far enough,
Wow.
So, and that was spread by, historically that's been a lot of these jihadi armies coming out and just wiping out other faiths so that they can command and control that area. But I won't go down that rabbit hole. That's a really long
next episode, right? Next episode.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, that's interesting. So, but is there a figurehead here? And that's the other thing that
Excellent question.
There has to be a buck stops here type person.
There's several actually, John. Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum has put together the future. He's got Bill Gates to support him. He's got a lot of high-tech people that are supporting him, including Wall Street people. They join him in Davos, Switzerland once a year, and they control the World Health Organization out of Geneva, World Economic Forum. And so it all goes back to money and controlling money. And they want to control the United States corporations. They want to own us. And that's why Trump understands it. Two other people that understand what's going on, John, are Xi in China and Putin in Russia. They both understand what the globalists are trying to do. The Rothschilds, when you go back to controlling money and all of that stuff. So it's about trying to control U.S. industry, own it. And that's why the Chinese have been buying up a lot of land in the United States, as well as Canada. And so when you put all this together, then you put in puppets like you do in Great Britain, Macron in France, Obama and Biden in the United States. These guys have all been programmed, and it's all been carefully coordinated, so to speak. But now we have President Trump who understands that, and he's going to defeat them all.
Yeah. Let's not forget about Fidel Castro's son up north of us.
Yeah, exactly. He's under a lot of tension up there, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
He was just in Mar-a-Lago yesterday, by the way, sucking up to President Trump at a dinner.
We literally talked about that yesterday when Trump threatened the tariffs. He was on the phone with him within minutes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Reportedly inside of 10 minutes. Question for Matthew.
And he is Fidel's son, by the way. I know the story behind that.
Well, it just looks alone kind of bear that out. But
bio, they're exactly the same.
Question for Matthew and the general. Can you explain, number one, information warfare, and then number two, related to that, I've been told by people in the military who are, tech people, that we're a whole lot better at going on offense than we are at defense when it comes to the information warfare. Is that the case or not? So explain what information warfare looks like and then where we stand on it.
Paul, you want to start on that one?
Yeah, let me go back. In 1982, by direction of the Pentagon, I wrote Mind War to counter the Russian strategic psychological operations against the world, against the West, called Mind War. And it was so powerful, they wouldn't even publish it at the Army War College. But what it is basically, when I was the head of PSYOPs at the Pentagon, strategic PSYOPs, they didn't want to use psychological operations anymore. And so they morphed into information warfare, information management, managing information and data going out. And there's two types of psychological operations. White operations, when you're trying to convince a group or a crowd of the real thing. Okay. When you get into black ops, then you're basically like a World War II, where Eisenhower said, well, the Germans picked up, we're going to attack up north, but we actually attacked in Normandy. So this is planning information distortion. Some's the truth, the other is not the truth. And you have to understand that. But the media, the Pentagon, did not want to use psychological operations anymore. This was back in the late 80s. And so they sort of morphed into this information management thing, information warfare, and that's what it is today. It's strategic psychological operations to sway and to affect the thought process of a certain group of people or a country or whatever. And they do that through the media today, through the radio, television, social platforms, and so on. So it's very well programmed.
Okay. Matthew, you want to add to that?
Yeah. So I'll talk about a couple of things that you guys mentioned, Chris and John. So John, you said, basically asking one of your questions, how do they communicate? And Chris, you said we're doing it to ourselves. Okay. After information warfare penetrates into a society, it's self-propagating.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what we've got now in some of our military. It's definitely throughout our society. And if you ever listen to Yuri Bezmenov, he talks about how this information warfare, which is a type of non-kinetic warfare, a part of the spectrum of war. Okay, it's kind of a subordinate aspect of the spectrum of war. And our enemies are brilliant at it. They just are. You have to admit that. And the hardest part, and Paul touched about this a little bit, is we don't want to be honest with ourselves because we have to admit that we screwed up. Okay. And, you know, we at the MacArthur Society at West Point graduates, you know, listen, I'm not anybody's hero. I'm not anybody's saint. I'm not anybody's preacher. Okay. But what we strive for is to be honorable. And that means if you make a mistake, you correct it, the sooner the better. Obviously, there are certain ways to do that. Okay. But right now, and when you want me to, I can list some of the main problems we're facing at each of the three main service academies, Chris, but we have, you know, John, this more applies to a question you asked. How do they communicate? We have, and some of the generals have allowed the enemy in the gates, and such that we have embraced their form of information warfare, a type of non-kinetic warfare, okay, against ourselves. Now, MacArthur Society is not for any party, okay, in particular, but I will tell you this factually, that President-elect Trump did in fact disrupt an agenda, okay? And I'll quote Stephen Coughlin, you know, under the leadership of Trump, the American citizen is now in control, okay? Mm-hmm. That said, everything is cyclical, okay? And right now, we need to run. We need to run. Now, Paul and I never argue, but if we do have an argument, it's this. He says the changes can happen quick. I kind of think it'll take a few years because there are people, according to Yuri Bezmenov in this model, it's going to take them a while to face reality. I've got friends, I go to, who are my classmates at West Point, and they're totally bought into DEI. We give them the facts, but they just won't face it. It's going to take time. And the fact is, there's a right way and a wrong way to make a transition. Chris?
Just a quick question, then carry on. some of our guys in our team, in addition to John, are military veterans, and they've all said that these mentally ill transgender people that have been brought in under this DEI thing, none of them are deployable. Is that the case?
For about a year at least, because they have to get certain drugs and they can't be deployed on that. I know for a year at least medically. And as you know, President-elect Trump, one of his first EO's executive order is to medically retire every single transgender service member.
Okay, I appreciate it. Carry on with the rest of your stuff. I just wanted to get an answer to that.
Yeah. So there are problems, in my opinion. Strong leadership, with President-elect Trump and many others. I'm just stating facts. I'm not stating, endorsement, but you know how that is. You live in this world, but of nonprofits and everything. But the fact is, he has disrupted, a bigger plan. He has empowered the U.S. citizen. He has made some very powerful cabinet, appointees and leadership, which is making changes already. It's as if he is president already.
Exactly. Okay? Yeah. Good point, Matthew.
Yeah. Now, I will, if I could, Chris, share with you some of the detailed problems we're facing at the service academies.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm not doing this just to scare you or piss anybody off, because I'm going to give you guys some hope. Okay. But yeah, you need to know the truth. But we're at the hope. It's going to take a lot of work, and we need to keep running. Okay. Okay. So at West Point has a minor in diversity and inclusion. Okay. Just straightforward. Diversity and inclusion is cultural Marxism. Okay. It's cultural Marxism. Now, for those of you who may or may not know, when you have a minor or a major in college, often you have what's called a capstone project. You work on it the whole semester, or you work on it the whole year, and you say, this is my project, and that's your grade. Well, in this diversity and inclusion minor at West Point, there were 2 projects that were clearly cultural Marxism, and the titles. Okay, just for your audience and for you guys, get ready for the first stage of grief, which is denial. Maybe not. So you ready? This is one of the titles of this talk: The Evolution of Cross-Dressing in the Military and Gender Norms.
Truth.
Are you kidding me? This was approved by the department head for the diversity, the minor diversity inclusion. Okay, next one. All right. Deconstructing patriotism. Deconstructing patriotism. If you know anything about cultural Marxism, that word deconstruct is how you subvert a culture. Okay, that's how you. Classic. Oh man, Chris, you're the man. You are the man. And for those of you who are listening on podcast, he's got a picture of Klinger in spring attire with a dress, and oh my gosh, those hairy legs are crazy.
That's perfect.
Lovely dress, though.
It looks
That'll
like an
scare
M1.
the Russians. That should scare the Chinese.
It looks like he's got an M1 Garand too. So
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, right, Chris.
Guys, I don't want to get in trouble, but it is hilarious. Okay, next at the United States Naval Academy. Okay, so from back channels, on two separate occasions, midshipmen have reached out to our sources and said in the classes they were taking in a diversity and inclusion minor, when you start a class at the beginning, everyone stands up and you salute and you report, sir, 19 midshipmen present, all present and accounted for. And, if you're a cadet at West Point, you say, sir, ma'am, 19 cadets accounted for. Well, in this diversity and inclusion minor at Annapolis, the person saluting and reporting had to say their preferred pronoun.
Yes.
Okay. That was actually reported to us or through our back channels.
Yeah.
Okay. Now these are just part of the problems, guys. Now let's go to the Air Force Academy, which we believe has had the worst attacks. Okay. They've kind of gotten a 1-2 punch. All right. So now the big picture of all service academies, there are actually 5 service academies. I mentioned 3 of them: West Point, Annapolis, and United States Air Force Academy at Colorado Springs, Colorado. But there are two others, United States Merchant Marine Academy. They do shipping, okay, and during time of war, they fall under the Department of Defense and everything. And then there's the United States Coast Guard Academy, which is, falls under the Department of Homeland Security. The MacArthur Society didn't work on those because that would be three different, cabinet, offices. So we're just focusing on the DOD. But anyway, so the United States Air Force Academy and all the service academies, the crown jewel is the honor code. And basically, they vary slightly, but it's basically this: a cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. Now, that tolerate means you have a culture of honor. When you have people who just say, I won't lie, cheat, or steal, but they don't hold each other accountable. If you all ever lifted weights or try to lose weight, when you got a battle buddy, man, it's a lot easier, But so that toleration clause is what creates a culture. Well, the Air Force Academy superintendent made a decision not to enforce the toleration clause of the Cadet Honor Code for the first 2 years. So basically, I mean, a little bit hyperbole here, but it's basically a cadet will not lie, cheat, or steal who cannot do it well. That's a little bit harsh, okay? But basically, when you don't have your buddies holding you to a higher standard and you don't have a culture, you got problems. And here's something else, okay? That superintendent, and if he, I think it's a he, yeah, it's a he. The Naval Academy is female superintendent, but if I was to speak the Air Force Academy superintendent or any superintendent, don't let the tail wag the dog. We have heard parroted, well, it's the culture. Okay, I'm not going to cuss, okay, but it's like, no, a leader is supposed to lead. They set the standard and say, here's the bar. You get over it or you're gone. That's it. Okay.
Matt, let me make one point here. And we found out through all of this that when they looked at the blacks being brought into the academies, that they didn't have the same cultural ethics in their families that the whites do. So therefore, they don't have to be held to the same standards of you do not lie, cheat, or steal. And what a slam against our black community.
It is.
Which are very religious, and
that is racist.
They use that as an excuse. I mean, that's unbelievable what's filtrated into these academies like that. That, okay, well, he stole a watch at the PX, but that's okay. He's a football player. It's ethnically, and he was black, but we'll forgive him. And they ended up graduating him. But that's the kind of thought process that's gone in, and these generals are backing it. That's why Trump has got to relieve and retire all these generals and admirals in charge of our academies. It's got to be done.
I mean, basically, in this context, it's saying it sends a message. Now, I don't agree with this message. This is a false message, but the message they're sending, in this context is, we expect less of you. Therefore, we will hold you to a lesser standard. Mm-hmm. You're not helping anybody.
You're
not helping anybody. Okay,
that's why I say they blame it on their upbringing, where they grew up in the inner cities and they could steal. That's no excuse. You don't want leaders that think like that. You got to change that thinking.
The soul of every heart and man yields for greatness and excellence. They just need a leader to call it out.
Absolutely.
And in this context, they're failing. Chris?
Well, I was just going to say, it sounds like the left's argument with elections and voter ID. Well, we can't have voter ID because it's racist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And have you seen when somebody goes and asks, every black person, do you have ID? They look at them like they got three eyes growing. Yeah, of course I have ID. Why? Well, the Democrats say that you're too stupid to get an ID. Therefore, we can't have voter ID. It reminds me of the same mindset on the part of the left.
Yeah. So getting back to the Air Force Academy. So basically, the left has attacked the honor code. Now, the excuse is, well, our culture. That is such terrible leadership. Okay. Leader's supposed to set the standard. Meanwhile, okay, every single squadron it's like an army company. The Air Force Academy has squadrons. Every squadron, you ready for this, has a diversity officer, and they wear a purple rope on their shoulder to designate diversity. It's important. So what's happening, gentlemen, is is the Air Force Academy is attacking what makes it sacred, what makes it exceptional, the honor code. And they're elevating cultural Marxism. Now, you guys asked this before. I think, Chris, you asked this. How did this happen? And we haven't answered that question yet. And there's a spectrum of why some people have been caught onto it. And a lot of Americans have good intentions. Our enemy understands, Americans have this thing with being heroes. We do, but they have subverted our good intentions and aimed it towards our own demise. But we're on to them. We're on to them. We have a lot of work to do. Okay. So the Air Force is getting a 1-2 punch. And this is where the MacArthur Society comes in. Now, MacArthur Society has made a proposal. Okay. It's called the Duty Honor Country Commission. It's basically what's called a blue ribbon study. We send in subject matter experts in there to research. Thank you, Chris, on what are the problems. And it has with the questions say are, what is the level of Marxism in the at West Point, and I can send these to you in detail. It talks about race-based admissions. We talk about honor code issues, and what happens is they come back with the research, and we have another group that we're recommending, Council of Generals and Colonels, who look at it and then make recommendation to the Executive Council, the chairman and the leaders, maybe 2 from each branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, what have you. But so, and then they make recommendations to the Secretary of Defense. Now, we base this off of what's called the Borman Commission. I don't know if you guys know this, but in 1976, there was a West Point cheating scandal. 153 cadets were caught cheating on an engineering exam. It was such a shock to the American psyche and to the U.S. Army. The Secretary of the Army said, time out. We need to do a study. It was a blue ribbon study led by, Frank Borman, West Point grad, Air Force pilot and NASA astronaut, the all-American guy, right? Well, we said, guys, we know there are problems at West Point. If we just get rid of DEI, if we just put some, great program in there like the 1776 Commission, it's not enough. And I'll tell you, Chris, John, and Paul, you already know this. I have spoken face-to-face with members of Congress. I've spoken face-to-face with Senator Cruz, Congressman Mike Waltz, who's now going to be the National Security Advisor for Trump. I've spoken to Congressman Keith Self, so many of them. In fact, at one point, we're talking to Congressman Mike Waltz. And this was, earlier this year. He goes, all right, let me just tell you, we believe Trump's going to win. And when I present this to him, he's going to say, like, why do we need the Duty Honor Country Commission? I'm going to get rid of DEI. I'm going to put in the 1776 Commission. Why? And I said, sir, it's not enough. DEI is everywhere. The concept of DEI has been elevated to the level of character development. It's not enough. The best thing for this is to get down there and see how far the cancer goes. And the Duty Honor Country Commission is the best thing. So Congressman Mike Waltz looks at me. He gives me a karate chop and a pause, and he goes, say what you said to me and Trumpify it. Half page.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I said, yes, sir. And you guys want to know what Senator Cruz said?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not endorsing a candidate, but I'll tell you what he said. Okay. So it was an awesome story. We don't have time for it all. So we're briefing him, and he's got on his desk, an article that one of our members wrote, and we were very flattered by that. And he asked for it, not his staff. But anyway, halfway through our presentation, we were talking about how West Point had removed Duty Honor Country from the mission statement. And then he kind of told us to pause a second. He goes, hey, Jeff, one of his staffers, what to say we draft a resolution to get Duty Honor Country back into our service academies?
Yep.
Is that incredible?
Incredible. Yep.
This is what the MacArthur Society of West Point graduates is doing. Okay. Yeah. So we're on the front lines. We have broken stories, and there's more we can tell you. And there's some that I can't tell you. I cannot tell you. Okay. Maybe off stage. But it's very promising. Things have changed. Paul is one of the visionaries who said, we need our own society. Thank you, Paul, for that. I do believe that the Duty on Our Country Commission is probably one of the best things that's happened to the 3 service academies in a couple generations. So any questions on that?
More of a comment. I was probably the one on the panel that was the least shocked that the Air Force was the one with the most rot. As
Really?
someone who served in the Air Force, I honestly saw this coming when I got out back in 2013.
Wow.
I mean, it was when Obama became president, there was a general shift in the training that we were getting, in the kind of education we were getting. It went from, job related things to more of a what's the best word to use? More of a DEI type thing, of talking about cultural Marxist issues for sure. And I saw that coming. And that's honestly one of the main reasons that I got out of the military, was because I saw it coming. And I said, I'm not going to be a part of this, because we're not being trained to actually go to war. We're being trained to become robots.
Yeah. And John, to your point, and this is what really concerned us. Remember how I said in this conversation with Congressman Waltz, I said, DEI has been elevated to the level of character development. Mm-hmm. The oath to the Constitution has been supplanted by, a hero's passion to save America through DEI. It's a type of subversion. And we could talk many episodes about the concept of subversion. But John, you're one of the early people that saw that. In fact, we actually came to the same conclusion that you did. In fact, we did a study and looked at the data, and my sources tell me that the CIA does this, is that when they look at an event, they look at the date. And all these events, DEI or what have you, wokeness, it goes back when it had a hockey stick of, changes to one man in 1 year. That man was Obama, and that year was 2012.
Yep.
So you're right, John. The data is there. We have Obama's quotes. Well, now, remember, he told us he's going to fundamentally transform America, and he wasn't lying.
Yep. In fact, if you go back and you look at the first omnibus package I think it was the stimulus package was what it was called in 2009, that was passed in Congress, that had the guts and the bones of fundamental transformation for this country. When you actually go back and look at all of the things that were included in that.
You're on to something, John. And one of the things that we want to do, and if I get my way, I'll work in the next president's administration working on this. And, people joke, oh, that's so wonky. We need some wonky people working on policy, brother. So you're 100% right, John. I agree with you. And that's part of what we're doing at MacArthur Society.
Well, John, Matt, we need the kind of young people like you. I'll say young.
Thank you, Paul.
To get in there, the middle age. And that's what I like about the new candidates and what Trump has been doing. He's getting people into 30s and 40s, getting some younger people in there, but creative people. People understand what's going on. Get rid of these old, whatever you want to call them, that have no creative thinking ability, no cognitive thinking. That's led us down this path under the Bidens and the Obamas. And that's why we call Obama the Manchurian candidate.
Right. So question for y'all. I'm guessing in some instances, some of this, unusual warfare, asymmetric stuff, it's difficult to attribute to which party did it in the first place. But when we do find a path back and we attribute it, say, Chinese, North Koreans, Iranians, whatever, do we then go back on the offense against them using asymmetric warfare against them once we've identified them?
Well, we have the capability already to do it, but it takes leadership to execute those plans. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the new leadership, Trump has formed a new panel of some retired generals and admirals that are advising him on the new leadership that we need in the Defense Department. And we're actually saying we need to re-image the Defense Department. We want to call it the Department of the Armed Forces of America. We want to do away with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We want a command-driven force that can win our wars and get rid of all this duplication of civilian deputy secretary for this and that. We don't need all of this stuff in the Pentagon. It's a total waste of money. And so we need to streamline our Pentagon to fight the wars of tomorrow.
There we go. And so if I could add to that, Paul?
Sure.
Okay, so Paul, he's visionary. Okay, these are policies that he's thought of that are getting into, from what I understand, in the new administration. So, in addition to the leadership, Chris, there are so many facets of the solution. It starts with leadership, but in my opinion, the number one thing for a strong military is that every single troop, every single, and I say soldier, I mean all branches, okay? They are first an engaged U.S. citizen. They love our country. They understand that we have something special, where we are led by the people we gave power to, and we can take it away. That we have the right for free speech, to exercise religion, to bear arms, what have you. And those are God-given, not by a country. Our Judeo-Christian heritage, they understand that. Even if someone, doesn't believe in God, they understand the pragmatic reasons for having, faith. So if someone is first an engaged citizen, okay, they can, and whether you're a private, whether you recruit, whether you're an NCO, sergeant major, first sergeant, master sergeant, colonel, general, that your duty is first to your country. And here's the problem. I mean, John, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard anybody in the military say, I'm a military, I'm not political? You ever heard that?
Yes.
I did too. That is a mistake. I believe that every single soldier and, airman, Marine, what have you, should be told your first duty is to your country, and that's to be an engaged citizen. Part of your duty is to be great at your job. But more important is you need to understand your history, love your country. You need to understand the Constitution. So Chris, you probably took an oath to your, county. John, Paul, we took an oath to the Constitution, and I thought, man, I get to swear, I'm under God, I wasn't really,
Well, Matt, let me make one good point and follow up, and then we can finish up here. But how many times have you heard these bureaucrats in Washington? What's in the best interest of the FBI? What's in the best interest of the Defense Department? Where they should be saying, what's in the best interest of the American people to do what we have to do? And as soon as you hear them saying that, they're deep state, they're bureaucrats. They'll never have any creative thinking out of the box like we do. But Matt, I want to thank you for all you're doing for the society, by the way. Sure. And Chris, thank you for having us on. And John, great seeing you again.
Yep. Yeah. That is you hit the nail on the head there, General, that it has to be, well, I think that Matt, you said this, it has to be people that are patriotic, that are American citizens that care about this country. And anytime that we see somebody that is putting the interest of something else in front of the interest of the American people and the Constitution of the United States, they are self-serving, or they are a part of some kind of deep state conglomerate that is furthering the policies of that. Just as you said, General, it's a broken system.
It's a signal right away, John. It tells you right away where they're coming from.
And have we? Here's a question that could take us to a dark place. Have we reached a point where the cancer has overtaken the host in these organizations?
Almost.
Yeah, not quite. But
thank God, God inspired. We got Trump, and that's going to change. So we're going to take over all of that. But it's been so timely that it's happened in 2024.
I tell you what, I've been reaching a state of black pilled for a very long time, and I think I'm still in the red pill realm. But I am definitely
okay, John. We're going to be okay.
Hang with us, brother. We understand.
It's
right to the end.
It's like almost to the point where I'm going to go hide in the mountains and just be a hermit the rest of my life.
We understand, brother. We understand.
Go ahead, Chris. Thank you.
Well, yeah, General. we had a conversation months ago with regards to public officials breaking the law, and you pointing out that nobody has held them accountable for breaking the law. So just if you had your look at your crystal ball here, are we going to see some of these public officials held accountable in your opinion? And next after that would be including Mark Milley. Is there any chance he gets recalled and court-martialed, or is that just hyperbole?
No, that could happen for a lot of different reasons. But back to an article I wrote several years ago, that we have to hold these mayors, these DAs, these judges responsible if they're incentivizing crime in our cities by releasing these criminals back on the street committing more crimes, raping our young women, killing them, and so on. They're not above the law, as they say, as it's been all over the news today about Biden and his son above the law. But they have to be arrested. They have to be put in cuffs because they're incentivizing killing, stealing, burglarizing criminal activity. And they have no right to do that as an elected official. So they need to be arrested. Tom Homan even said he would arrest the mayor of Denver if he continued to shelter the Venezuelan gangs up there.
Yeah, and I noticed that Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston, and several other ones that were talking tough as soon as Tom Homan said, listen, here's the code in the section. I've got it in my notes somewhere over here, U.S. Code 1324, that they backtracked on that significantly. They stopped talking, with so much bravado. Mm-hmm. But I appreciate your insight on that, because my feeling is if none of these people are held accountable, that
none of them are held accountable. And look at the Americans being raped and killed, and young women, and what's happening. The fentanyl that's coming in, they're allowed to continue to produce and sell within our cities and in our towns. And the sheriffs need to stand up, Chris. The sheriffs can deputize as many people as they want to.
So my understanding, and I'm not exactly close friends with Tom Homan, but we've been in meetings together. We've met personally. He's a great guy. Is that everybody who's got a badge and a gun is going to be put in the field, and their administrative jobs are going to be contracted out to somebody who's not a law enforcement officer, essentially, to help bolster their ranks.
Well, that's why you deputize people, Chris. You don't have to pay them; they're volunteers. Look at all the retired policemen, all the retired military. You can deputize them tomorrow. They're already trained.
So our mutual friend, Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers, is going to be on with us this week. I think it's Wednesday night. And he has some information, on some early thinking as far as how we buttress our manpower to get the illegals out of the country. This is my last question. Do you foresee a role for the military in assisting law enforcement getting illegals out of the country?
Oh, absolutely. What you do is you federalize their national guards in each state to provide security, to provide transportation, communications, to assist these sheriffs and Tom Homan. He needs help. And that's what our military is for. Okay? Foreign and domestic enemies. And the Posse Comitatus Act, basically they don't have an arrest authority, but you have the sheriffs and the police can arrest them, but they can be detained by the deputies or the deputized people in the different counties.
So I lied. I have one more question. On September the 27th, the Biden admin, which I typically refer to as the Brennan Obama admin, very quietly updated DOD Directive 5240.01. Right. And of course, National Guard are not subject to the same rules as the DOD is, but to use lethal force against Americans on American soil. And it took a couple weeks before somebody caught it and blew the story out there. Does that play a role in any of this? Like, I'd love to hear.
We're throwing out that, Chris, under what they call martial law, which sets aside Congress and the Constitution to restore America. The president can do that.
Where's that codified, just out of curiosity?
In the Constitution.
So if you do a word search through the Constitution, the words martial law don't appear in there anywhere. So there must be some other language.
It's also in the UCMJ that you can find it somewhere in there. But certainly, why wouldn't it be? Why can't you use the military to save our country, to protect us externally or internally?
Okay, so for real, last question this
Yeah.
time. When Trump designates the cartels as foreign terrorist organization,
It doesn't have to.
okay, that's what I'm getting at, because I keep getting different answers from people.
They're not terrorists.
It's not necessary.
They're not terrorists. They're an armed military force. They have better military equipment than the Mexican armed forces do.
Okay.
They're killing Americans.
But we don't
cross-border operations. You know, they're not terrorists. They're a well-funded global organization that deals in billions of dollars with the Chinese, and you don't need to designate them as a terrorist organization. That's for Islamists and all that. That's all crap they throw out there.
Okay,
because we've heard America, you can attack any target, anytime, anywhere. You don't even have to get congressional approval to take out an immediate target. If someone's going to launch a missile against the United States in the next 24 hours, we can take it out. We don't have to go to Congress to get it approved.
Yeah, I thank you for the clarification on that. I want to address this statement from Robert Ham too. That directive is only to be used while assisting civilian law enforcement. Right. That's correct, but the way the directive is written, some podunk, police department could say we need mutual aid, and that's all that's necessary to use DOD Directive 5240.01. So
use our military. We've got enemy within our boundaries.
Yeah,
we have these bound, and it's fostered by the CCP, and it's fostered by the cartels, and so they're an enemy that we have to destroy because they're destroying us. We don't need congressional approval to take out an enemy that's imminent, and they're imminent each day. They're imminent. It's just crazy thinking. This is what these bureaucrats, this is what these congressional nun warriors think. Yo, we got to have this and all that. Where did we get permission to go into Vietnam? Where did we get permission to go into Iran? I mean, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria.
Worth noting that you are a Vietnam veteran, and did you do? Was it 3 deployments?
2.
2. Okay. So I appreciate that. So we're pretty much at the end of chapter 1 tonight. John and I are going to hang out and cover some more news stuff, but just a couple quick statements. Number 1, I don't know about you, John, but I don't care what the general says about Matthew. He's a pretty good guy. He's pretty smart.
He's a great guy. He's my hero.
No, I'm just joking. Obviously, he's absolutely fantastic. The other statement in question is that the general is one of the co-founders of Nemo Arms, very high-end guns. And my point there is how come you haven't sent me the Omen yet?
That's been rated the top 5 sniper rifles in the world.
Wow.
And if you spell it backwards, it's Nemo, which was my black lab. That's how we named the company, Nemo. So the Omen is our premier sniper rifle.
Well, I don't want the sniper version. I want the pistol version.
Well, we got pistols, we got shotguns, we got everything. Just go on the website, nemoarms.com.
Yeah, and I haven't seen any show up here yet anywhere. I'm looking around.
Well, we can make that happen.
I just tease you. Are you going to be at SHOT Show, by the way, General?
No, I don't go to those anymore. My guys all go down. Yeah, it's too much for me at 85 to go through all that stuff. A lot of energy.
It is, but you're sharp as attack. Matthew, are you going by chance?
What's that?
Are you going to SHOT Show in January in Vegas by chance?
I don't have any plans at this time, but if plans take me there, I'd have a great time.
Right on. John and I will be there. He'll be signing.
Well, look up the Nemo guys.
Signing autographs.
Look up Bill King. He's our president. Bill King.
Yeah, I think I've got his coordinates from, I don't know if it was him or somebody else was at the filming for Surviving Man All-Stars at Prairie Fire, the old front site in Pahrump, Nevada.
By the way, Chris, we were the first ones to have a magazine-fed sniper rifle.
I know. It's awesome.
We developed that early on, and also the same thing with the recoil with our 300 Win Mag. You keep shooting that, it's going to knock your shoulder off. We devised the thing that goes like that. Almost no bounce back on the shoulder for a 300 Win Mag. Anyhow.
Okay. Well, listen, we appreciate both of you coming on. If you're watching it in the audience, pardon me, hang out. John and I still got some more territory to cover, but General, thank you very much.
Great.
Matthew, we'll see you Wednesday.
Chris, can I make one request?
Absolutely.
Yeah, your audience is awesome, and they're engaged. I'd like to ask them to go to MacArthurSociety.org. That's MAC, MacArthurSociety.org. Join the MacArthur Society. We actually have a town hall this Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern. And if you want to get some of the frontline look of what's going on, it's going to be good. It's free to sign up. We have limited seating, and if you have the heart, if you can, please donate, because the work that we do, it's substantial, it's meaningful, and this is a way for you to participate if you can.
Thanks, Matthew, for doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, guys, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Good to meet you, John. Good seeing you.
You too. We'll be in touch.
All right, do it again.
All right, thanks, guys. So, John, you weren't with me last night, but our policy on products. You're the same way. We're not in the business of ruining people's businesses. We don't put bad stuff out there. This is actually the only product that I endorsed for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. But this is a little speaker from Muse, and the thing weighs a ton. I did a bunch of drop tests on it, by the way, and it's friggin' bulletproof. And I just wanted to mention that you can still get 25% off this guy on Amazon, and it gets automatically applied now. So you don't have to worry about discount codes or anything like that. I'll pull it up here quickly. So there it is. And it shows that it's $90, but when you go to log out and pay, it knocks it down to $67.49 sort of thing. So I don't know about you, John, but when I'm training, doesn't matter if I'm lifting weights, whatever the case may be, I got to have music.
Me too.
And, for the price of this thing, it way overperforms. It's super solid. Again, it's the only product I'm endorsing for Black Friday and Cyber Monday this year. There's a link down below in the description. Check it out. Pretty cool little device. And if my memory serves me right, at the end of this episode, there's actually like a 1.5 minute infomercial on it at the end of the video. So moving on from there, let's just jump right into this right off the bat. Thoughts on Joe Biden pardoning Hunter Biden?
Why did it take him so long? We all knew it was coming. I mean, in all honesty, that's par for the course for a corrupt bureaucrat, in all honesty. And it goes to show you that the Trump thing and him grandstanding about no one is above the law and all this stuff, and we've seen the memes, we've heard all of the videos that people have put out. It's ridiculous. It's disgusting. And in my opinion, it is borderline treasonous that you should be able to, a lawfully indicted person, especially a family member who enriched you with millions of dollars, went and picked up bags of cash. And this is not speculation. This was all in the laptop.
Right.
This was all in the laptop. There were emails that were verified on both ends, the sources, and they also had business partners that openly came forward and said, yes, Joe Biden is the big guy that was referenced in the Chinese deal. Ironically, they tried to impeach Trump the first time that he started investigating an energy company in Ukraine. Ironically, that energy company was Burisma, where Hunter Biden was on the board, with zero experience in the energy field. This is disgusting, but it's shocking, but not surprising. That's the way I would say it.
Okay, so I have not been able to verify this. I was in Orlando today shooting part of the 5G docuseries that Dr. Jason Dean and I are doing. But maybe you've had the opportunity to look into this. There's some reports out there, and I'll take a quick look for it here, that Trump's team is saying that the DOJ is going to ask SCOTUS to have a look at this pardon because the broad language that essentially says, and any crime committed before January 1st, 2014 and December 1st, 2024, that's not legal. is what some people inside the Trump camp are saying. And I didn't know this, but if a court finds something in a pardon that is illegal, the whole pardon goes out the window. So I didn't know that until today. I've just been catching bits and pieces. But if the new DOJ goes after this and ends up nuking the pardon, I mean, did you catch the numbers, by the way? You're talking almost 600 charges between all the different things that were, on paper as for what they had charged Hunter Biden with. I didn't realize it was that extensive. Like, I guess they're all counts of different types of things. But the reason I mention it is this. I'll pull this up quickly. So by pardoning Hunter, Joe Biden covers up his own influence peddling crimes. So what I picked up today on the way back from Orlando was that if the Supreme Court says this pardon is null and void, all of the stuff that's on the Hunter Biden laptop, which details all the shadiness, comes out. And I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a bunch of timeline graphs that they put together that says, okay, on this day, this Ukrainian entity met with Joe Biden, as an official envoy of the United States. And on this day, they wired, X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions to Joe Biden's brother and his brother's wife. And then the next day, they took a substantial amount out in cash. And then the next day, all of it except for about 10% goes into account for Joe Biden. I mean, and they've got example after example after example. I mean, here's the thing, the 2020 election was stolen. We all know that. There was a shit ton of evidence to that effect. But there were still a significant number of people who voted for this clown. And it actually caused some issues in my family because I was very vocal and said, anybody who votes for Joe Biden is an absolute moron. And Cindy said to me, there's some people in the family, they feel like you're calling them stupid for doing this, that, and the other thing. And I'm kind of like, well, yeah, I am. That's my opinion of them, sort of thing, right? But here's what I used to ask people, John. I'm old enough to remember when he got kicked out of the frickin' race in 1988 because he lied. And it was a famous news clip at the time, and you can look it up, where somebody asked him a legit comment. He flew off the handle like he's always done. He's a professional, angry person, something like that. And he said, I graduated, taught my class, and I had 4 whatever degrees. He lied and lied and lied. He had to drop out of the presidential race because of that. And during the run up to 2020, I would say, friends and family. I mean, how can you vote for this guy when it's so easy to see? Number one, he's never held a job ever. And number two, he's lied his entire career. And number three, he graduated at the bottom of his class. I think he was like 4th from the bottom out of a class of 80 people or something. But I don't know. I would love to see something come out of this. My feeling is, and you can tell me what you think, my feeling is that if SCOTUS overturns this and it's nullified, that they hang Hunter Biden, but they give Joe Biden a pass because they'll say that he's dementia riddled and we can't put him in jail because of that. And I think part of the reason he's so angry is I have a little bit of experience with dementia in the family, is that there's this phase for people who have Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia where they get really, really mad. It might last a day. It might last a couple of years, but it always happens when they have one foot in reality and one foot in la land, and they know that they're losing their faculties and they get really angry. And some of them, I know of people who were never violent their entire lives. Then they got diagnosed with Alzheimer's and they turned into a different person and they got physically violent and angry. And then I was there one day when I saw somebody who was in that mode basically turn into like a bump on a log, literally, and they never raised their voice again after that. Like they'd fully transitioned into, cuckoo town. But I mean, those are my thoughts as far as if it gets overturned. But I mean, the story after story after story today on this Biden stuff. I think my most favorite thing is Dan Goldman was a good one. I don't know if you saw this, but somebody from CNN plays this clip of Dan Goldman not too long ago saying we're the party of law and order, and Joe Biden would never pardon his son, and this is why, and this is the stuff that Trump would do. And of course, there were something like 109 subpoenas for Don Jr. and 0 charges laid. He never let anybody in his family go like this. What was funny though is CNN playing it, and the guy sitting there going, like he didn't have an answer, right? Because he caught him in a bald-faced lie there. But either way, unless you got something else to say, we can move on to the next thing.
No, I'm going to address this real quick. Correction. Biden will be the second worst president in U.S. history. Obama will be the worst.
Yep.
When all is said and done, we look back on history 100 years from now, after we're all dead and gone, he will be viewed as the worst president, and Biden will be second worst.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I mean, Obama has done tremendous destruction or bad things to our country. And if he had been allowed to execute his 24-year plan, we would either be in a revolution or the country would be gone, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an interesting article today that, here's the thing. You tell me what you think. I don't think you should announce something like this before you get in office, because we just played our hand. Now all these scumbags who've participated in human trafficking and sex trafficking, they know that the Trump admin's coming after them. I wouldn't have announced this. I want them to go after these scumbags, but would you have announced it right now? I would have waited. But
yeah, I can't think of a reason to announce it myself. Maybe there is something that we don't understand in the background, but just on face value, I can't say that it was necessarily a good idea to announce something like this, because I mean, unless they're just trying to get all these people to leave the country.
I don't know. I wouldn't have played that card at this particular point in time is all I'm saying. I mean, these guys are smarter than I am, so maybe there's a reason for it, but that's just my particular opinion on that. So moving on to the next thing, this is pretty important. And, you know, I've spent over 40 years of my life in the gym. I competed at a world-class level. I trained beside Ronnie Coleman for years, for crying out loud, 8 times Mr. Olympia. And you would see somebody new come to the gym, and I know you've seen this. They're overweight and they're putting in an effort, and somebody chooses to make fun of them. And that used to really piss me off, you know. And then the next thing that used to piss me off seeing that stuff is that a lot of gyms, as you know, 70+% of the people they bill each month never go past the lobby. So I had a meeting with the CEO of that asshole national chain, pick things up, put them down, making fun of guys like me, right? And I asked them straight up, what on earth are you guys doing giving away pizza and Tootsie Rolls and all that stuff? They said, well, you know, we make the process so difficult to cancel your membership that we placate those people by, you know, giving them free pizza and Tootsie Rolls. They never go past the lobby. They stop in every Tuesday for Tootsie Rolls. They stop in every Monday for pizza. And let's face it, this we have a major problem on our hands. 208 million Americans overweight or obese. I've told you, when I go out in public, I look it and think to myself, okay, if the shit goes down, that guy's on my team and that guy's on my team. And a few weeks back, I told you there's 1,000 people in Sam's. I counted 6 people that I would go to war with. 6. And if somebody were to invade us and this is what was defending us, we would be in a world of hurt. So you're not going to get people who are in this type of condition to turn things around by making fun of them or, you know, calling them names or anything like that. The fact of the matter is our food system has been poisoned. So I think that a lot of good stuff is going to come out of RFK Jr. to, you know, clean up the food supply. What's his name? David Betts, something.
Patrick Bet Davis. Yeah.
He just did a comparison on McDonald's French fries in America versus outside of America. You know, and outside of America, it's potatoes, it's whatever oil they cook them in, and salt, basically, right? And on our side of the equation, there's this long list of all these crazy chemicals that do terrible things to you. And it causes these types of problems, right? Like our food is engineered at the most simplest level. I don't want to bore people and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but our food supply is specifically engineered to cause sugar spikes, sugar crashes. And how do you deal with a sugar crash? You have to eat more food to feel half-assed normal and get your blood sugar to come back up again. All you got to do is look up, complex carbs, high glycemic value carbs to be specific, right? So the reason I brought this up, because we're always preaching to people, Kaizen, right? You've worked for Japanese companies, and anybody who's not familiar with the term Kaizen, it's a Japanese term for continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So, I told you years ago, I had lunch with Coach Lou Holtz, and it's NCAA most winningest football coach in history. And he inundated us with just like all these epiphanies, John. And one of the things he said, you are either growing or you are dying, just like a tree. He said, go look up the life cycle of a tree. There's no such thing as a tree that maintains the status quo. You're growing or you're dying. And for whatever reason, it stuck with me all these years. You don't have to go out and run a marathon. You don't have to go to the gym for 2 hours a day. You don't have to go to the gym at all, for crying out loud. You can get bands and small dumbbells and all kinds of stuff at home. And at the end of the day, it's not about, it's not about the duration. It's not about going and training for 2 hours. You do 20 minutes balls to the wall at your level of balls to the wall. That's better than 4 hours of plodding along through something. So you don't have to give up a ton of time. But I think first and foremost, and I want you to comment on this because, you exercise, you train with guns like I do. I think that once the food supply gets cleaned up to a certain extent, thanks to RFK Jr. and MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, that people will feel better in general. And that then maybe it's time for some people to do some form of light exercise. And the reason I say light exercise, and I'm going to turn it over to you, I watched many years ago a large chain. So when I was competing, I had memberships at 6 different gyms. I have my powerlifting gym because you need a crew when you're, under 600-700 pounds. But I had all these other gyms for different accessory training. And I watched this one gym that was in a Publix complex, right? So people come, Publix is a grocery store here in the Southeast Florida in particular. So I watched these people walk by the door that were overweight. And one of the so-called trainers would go outside and literally drag them into the gym and tell them that they were going to do this free fitness assessment for them. So they'd get the tape measure out around their waist, and they get calipers out for, to calculate body fat percentages and blah, blah, blah. They put them on the scale. And then I would watch for 2 weeks that those people would come in and they were paying the gym fee and the training fee, the personal training fee. And it was a monthly stipend. And I would watch a trainer beat the crap out of these people to where at the 2 weeks in, they could barely walk back to their car. And they did it on purpose because I ended up overhearing a conversation, and this guy who owned it was a real scumbag. And those were his instructions to his people. Get them to sign up for a membership. Get them to sign up for personal training. Beat the crap out of them for a couple of weeks. They'll never come back, and we're not letting go of their bank account. I mean, I've spoken enough on this. Go ahead and say what you got to say on this, John.
Yeah, you can even do with the McDonald's fry thing. You can go back 30 years. You can go back, 30 years to the 1990s, and you can look at the ingredients in McDonald's fries back then. They fried them in beef tallow, which is actually one of the healthiest fats you can eat.
Big time.
And it was potatoes, beef tallow, and salt. That's all that was in McDonald's fries. Why did we change it? Why?
Well, I mean, I can answer that. So again, a lot of the manipulations to our food supply were done for the specific purpose of spiking people's blood sugar and then making it crash so that they eat more. And a great example, you're right, like we cook with beef tallow. We've been doing it for years, and now all of a sudden it's become a thing, right? Like people are running out of it and whatnot. But when you take fat out of food, and we had the big war on fat, thanks to the FDA in the 80s, and it tastes like crap. So the way you make it taste better is you put sugar into it. And sugar is processed the same way as cocaine. It lights up the cerebral cortex the same way as cocaine. It's more addictive than cocaine. And so what basically happened was the food companies took people's, food consumption to a whole new level by manipulating the sugar. And the amount of sugar Americans eat today versus when we were kids is an order of magnitude difference. You can find infographics online. Like it's like this much sugar in 1970 and it's a freaking mountain now, in this day and age. But this is a serious problem. And I don't think it's fair to lay it at people's feet because people don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know that the food supply has been poisoned. They don't know that if it even did 10 minutes of exercise that brought their heart rate up to 140 beats per minute, that they're going to improve, right? And if you do it for 30 days, it starts to become a habit. And if you get to 90 days, you'll probably do it the rest of your life for most habits. So I don't know. Myself, I think in terms of, my philosophy, instead of going to the gym, I'm going to do exercises at home with bands and dumbbells, and my heart rate's elevated, and I'm going to launch a volley of shots, and I'm going to sprint 20 yards, and then I'm going to go prone, and I'm going to launch a volley of shots. I put 1,000 rounds downrange every single week with an SBR, and that's my exercise. And the good side to it is, and you know this, for anybody in the audience out there, if you have never shot a gun with an elevated heart rate and you think you're going to hit something, it's not you. It's across the board. The chances of you actually hitting your target are slim to none. You can look up carjacking construction site and you will find a video where a guy's driving a 1-ton dually. A carjacker makes him get out of the truck. He gets in the truck. He doesn't even have the driver's door closed. One of the other construction workers pulls a pistol, shoots 5 or 6 times point blank range. Not one shot hit the carjacker. The carjacker backs up, puts his toe into it, drives over the guy who shot at him, and rolls up on the hood and then down underneath the front and killed him. He was DRT. So if you can't hit somebody at point blank range because your heart rate's so elevated, the only way to do it is you got to train at a higher level, right? Stress inoculation.
Yep.
Human beings don't rise to the occasion. They follow their level of training. So we'll get off of that subject.
100%.
I want the best for our audience and for our fellow citizens more than anything, and they've been sold a false bill of goods essentially, right? All right, so let's move on to this next one. We actually don't have that many news articles tonight, so it won't take us too long to go through this, but this is a decent video. I'm going to play the whole 2 minutes, but Andrew McCabe has been bashing Kash Patel, and he's the guy who destroyed the reputation probably more than anybody.
But former acting FBI director Andrew McCabe has this to say about the Patel choice.
It's a terrible development for the men and women of the FBI and also for the nation that depends on a highly functioning, professional, independent Federal Bureau of Investigation. The fact that Kash Patel is profoundly unqualified for this job is not even like a matter for debate.
Well, he'll have to talk about that as he goes through a Senate confirmation process.
First, let's talk about former acting FBI director Andrew McCabe. He was fired. He was fired for leaking information to the media. The Inspector General of the Department of Justice referred him for criminal prosecution. He is one of the top people who has destroyed the reputation of the FBI over the past 10 years. There's been no accountability for him, and he calls the current nominee unqualified. Well, let's take a look at Kash Patel's qualifications. He was the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, overseeing 17 intelligence agencies. He was in the Department of Justice under Barack Obama prosecuting ISIS. During the Trump administration, the first time around, he was in charge of taking out ISIS cells in the Middle East, what the administration did successfully. So he has the domestic policy or the foreign policy down. On the domestic side, he's the one who wrote that memo exposing the fact that the FBI was was illegally wiretapping, issuing FISA warrants against American citizens who worked for a political campaign, the first Trump campaign. He has gone through and exposed all of the civil liberty violations the FBI has engaged in with, again, no accountability over the past really 10 years. And this started at the IRS under Barack Obama, by the way. It wasn't just in the FBI. So people like Andrew McCabe are trying to claim this is some kind of retribution. They're conflating retribution with accountability. And Kash Patel not only has the experience on foreign policy, but also on domestic policy as well, with all of his work rooting out this corruption used for political purposes against political enemies inside the intelligence communities and on Capitol Hill.
Wow, she said a mouthful there, John. Comments on McCabe versus Kash Patel?
Remember what the general said earlier tonight. Whenever the first thing that they say is, this is bad for the organization.
Yeah.
What did he say? This is bad for the FBI.
Touche. So I personally think that we need to blow up these 3-letter organizations.
Yeah.
And some of them should never be brought back.
And we need to go after that couple that was having an extramarital affair, talking about how they were going to get Trump. They need to be thrown in prison.
They just got $1.2 million. Peter Strzok, whatever the broad's name was. But look what I found. This is the French fry thing from Patrick Bet-David.
Yep.
So we're going to play it since we mentioned it.
Here's what it looks like in U.S. versus UK. In U.S., it's potatoes, vegetable oil. Then you have canola oil, corn oil, soybean oil, hydrogenated soybean oil, natural beef flavor. Then you got dextrose, sodium acid, pyrophosphate, salt, fried and vegetable oil, blend with citric acid, and wow, dimethyl poly. All right, let me try it. And dimethyl poly. That's great. And dimethyl polysiloxane. Now, when you look at McDonald's fries in the UK, it's potatoes, vegetable oil, sunflower, rapeseed, dextrose, fried in non-hydrogenated vegetable oil. Salt is added after cooking. One, UK, pretty simple. In US, add a bunch of other preservatives to it. Now, let's look at ketchup. This is US versus UK and US. Ingredients: tomato, concentrate, distilled vinegar, high fructose, corn syrup, salt, spice, onion powder, natural flavoring. You go to UK. Tomatoes, spirit vinegar, sugar, salt, herb extracts, and spice. Notice on both of them, we're adding a bunch of stuff in US. Why?
So, I mean, I briefly touched on this earlier. Why are you putting, even in the UK, why is there dextrose in the French fries?
Yep.
There's dextrose in the French fries because it spikes your blood
sugar, and it's going to addict you, and you're going to want more McDonald's fries in an hour.
Exactly. So even that shouldn't be in there, but all the other chemicals that they've truly poisoned our food supply. And I'm really looking forward to RFK blowing that up in particular. So got a couple more left here in chapter 2. This is interesting. Have you caught that Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, has been cozying up to Trump and Tom Holman, saying he wants assistance, blah, 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 blah. Well, ICE says there's over 58,000 criminals amongst all these illegal invaders that are in New York City. But today, Eric Adams ordered 3 of the migrant facilities, housing facilities, shut down immediately. So we're back to, here's Trump. He's not even in office yet, and good things are happening. So, what cracks me up about Eric Adams, said some pretty shitty things as your typical Democrat mayor. And then he was like, whoa, wait a minute. All these illegals are coming to our city and we can't afford this, and started to speak out against it. And what was the next thing that happened to him? The deep state slapped them with a whole bunch of, charges and investigations.
I actually heard somebody say the other day that they think that Eric Adams, by the end of his tenure, is going to actually flip parties.
And that very well could be.
Because he's moving to the right in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
He's still a moron, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would necessarily forgive him, but what I've been saying, the older I get, nobody's perfect like Jesus Christ. So you can't hold somebody to a standard that says they can never make a mistake. Trump's a great example. I despise what happened with Operation Warp Speed.
Mm-hmm.
But again, who am I going to vote for? Nikki Haley or somebody like that?
Right, get real.
Yeah. So this is an interesting article. I don't know if you had a chance to go through the brief earlier today, but so the UN has this new censorship declaration, and it's pretty extensive. So if you go get the brief for this, those of you in the audience, patreon.com/survival dispatch, and there's a link in this article that will take you to the text. It's truly Orwellian stuff. It's basically cementing all the stuff that happened during the COVID thing to silence anybody who disagrees with the official narrative. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or not, John.
It's not surprising. It's shocking, but not surprising, as everything else. This is what they want, and they've been dealt a blow. But don't get me wrong. They're going to try and enact all of this stuff in other parts of the world. No doubt in my mind. Look at what's going on in UK. People are being thrown in jail. If they rape a girl, they get off. If they post something about the guy that raped the girl on Facebook, they go to jail.
It's even worse than that. So you have hardened criminals, and last count that I saw, 3,000 of them were released on early parole so they could make room for all the people that they've charged for hurting somebody's feelings with a social media post. I mean, it's insanity. Here's the next one, and that'll be the end of chapter 2. I'm not sure if you caught this or not, but there was a headline that says El Chapo warns U.S. military from jail that something terrifying is coming. And I searched high and low for anything to back this up and could not find a single thing to back it up. There were some people making comments that the Sinaloa cartel has, aerial assets at its disposal. If I had to guess, they mean drones when they say aerial assets. But this is an interesting video to watch, but I can't find anything to back it up. Your thoughts?
So we've had 4 years of an open border. They had to have thought there's an outside chance that Trump may win. What do we do then? Because I think all of these cartels knew what would happen if Trump got back in.
Mm-hmm.
He gets back in, it's the end game for them. Like, you keep messing with us, and honestly, they better do a good job. If they're going to do something, they better do a good job, because if it's traced back to them, he will drop some Navy SEALs on their ass, and they will be deleted from humanity. But I do think that there are assets inside this country, and they may not even be cartel. They may be some of the people they let in that they are working with.
Possibly.
Could be. This is all speculation, but the ability of drones to do terrible things, and we still don't have a good answer for them.
That's right.
So if you have swarm drones, you have all of this kind of stuff. Look up the videos of the Chinese swarm drones where they can make any kind of formation you want. They can fly in any manner that you want, and one person can control hundreds of them.
Thousands.
Yeah.
The drone swarm software can control one operator, 5,000 drones.
Yeah. You put all of those with explosives on them, you can do a lot of damage. I mean, you can. We've seen this stuff from Ukraine. And so I'm not going to put this past them. I hope that this is all just saber rattling on the part of El Chapo, but who knows?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm in the same spot. So that's the end of chapter 2. Quick message from CCW Safe, and then we're in the home stretch with some entertaining news items and memes and whatnot to finish up the night.
If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
All right. So first one I've got up here, John. This person, Maze, that I follow on X, says this is one of the best supercuts ever. It's not bad. I don't know if I'd say it's the best, but it's pretty good. I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's 9 minutes long. If you go grab the brief from our Patreon, you can watch the whole thing. But
The presidential promise to put the law before family.
I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Letting the world know that he will not wipe away the decision of 12 of his son's peers.
Was asked directly, and he has said he wouldn't pardon his son if he gets convicted.
Let's wait and see what happens if he loses.
Yeah, but he said it.
He's going to get pardoned by his dad. There's no question about that.
The president has ruled out pardoning his son.
Major commitment from the president, accepting the outcome of the trial and also pledging not to pardon his son.
So the challenge for him is really to continue to live up to his values when it was really personal. And he did that today.
It seems like a pretty normal, straightforward answer, but it takes new weight when we see what Trump is saying about the outcome of his trial, what we're hearing from other Republicans who say they don't accept the jury's verdict here in New York.
The contrast is profound. To sit there and say, well, I'm not going to intervene in the legal process and I wouldn't pardon my son. One side, Democrats and Joe Biden protecting the justice system. And on the other, Republicans and Trump protecting Trump.
A current president of the
Oh my God. I don't know if you want to comment on it, but
I really don't, because it all speaks for itself. The bias of the media is so disgusting and so broken.
It is. So check this one out. Step 1, Hunter's laptop is Russian disinformation. Step 2, Hunter's laptop was real, but it's old news. Step 3, Hunter gets a full pardon for everything he admitted to on his laptop since 2014. So you can't make this shit up. And here's the, I don't know what you want to call her, upside down mop, I guess, reiterating how Joe Biden would never pardon his son.
Secondly, his son, Hunter, is also up for being sentenced next month. Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
Mop head on fire.
Yeah. All right. This one here, I don't know. We may or may not play the full 4 minutes, but Scott Jennings has been on fire lately. I can't believe that they're letting this guy on CNN because he blows up all the other guys' woke crap. But we may play the whole thing. We may not. Let's just let her roll.
Joe Biden is leaving office making the strongest possible case for Donald Trump that anybody could possibly make it. And that's that our government and our justice system is of, by, and for the elites and nobody else. He ran to banish Trumpism from our political system in this country, and he has left it politically and now institutionally the strongest possible political force in this country. It is a complete and utter failure by the head of the Democratic Party and the President of the United States. Never again do I want to hear, oh, Donald Trump's a liar. You can't believe anything he says. Donald Trump will abuse his power. Donald Trump will only use the system to benefit himself and his family and so on and so forth. Never again. I have one question for Karen, and that is, why did he need an 11-year blanket pardon going back to 2014 when Joe Biden was the vice president? We are sitting on the biggest cover-up of who knows what crimes, and Joe Biden amazingly knows exactly, roughly, when it started. He knows just about when it all started. He's leaving office in complete and total disgrace. He is a liar, and there is no other way to spin this today. This has nothing to do with Trump and everything to do with the character of Joe Biden. You guys can spend all day long trying to spin this, that this is Donald Trump's fault, that this is somehow caused by Donald Trump. Oh, he's appointing the wrong people. Oh, he did it. Oh, this is the worst possible thing a president could possibly do to his party and to the country, to sit for a year and say, I will not do this. I will not do this. The rule of law is sacred. We have to respect the justice system. Juries, we have to respect juries. We have to respect the guardrails and the norms of our democracy. These people are liars. Inflation, it's transitory. Afghanistan, it's a success. The border is secure. Robert Hur is a liar. The videos are cheap fakes. Biden has a cold. He'll never drop out. Oh, I'll never pardon Hunter. It's all a lie. It is all a grift. Every American, except the most partisan, brain-rotted people, are going to be outraged by this today. He is going to leave off. You think 38, 39% job approval is bad? Just you wait. Just you wait. He's disgraced today. Outrageous.
Scott, you don't need to hurl names and say people like me are brain rotted. Come on.
Well, actually, I think he's being rather polite there, don't you, John?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, he could have gone a whole lot further with that. So, yeah, here's another good one from one of these talking heads. People who insist Biden will pardon Hunter after specifically ruling it out are telling on themselves. They can't imagine someone acting on principle and keeping his word. Readers added context. On December 1st, 2024, President Joe Biden announced that he had in fact pardoned his son, Hunter. Like, you can't make this stuff up. And here's these ass hats at the Lincoln Project. I love poking fun at these losers.
Every time I read their post, my testosterone goes down 100 points.
Yeah, it's toxic for sure. When mega cultists complain about a weaponized justice system, remind them that President Biden has refused to show favoritism towards his son because he has a commitment to the rule of law in our judicial system, regardless of who's involved. That was June 6th of this year. Oh my God. And then you got James Wood. I can't remember the exact number, but he reportedly has an IQ of something like 180 or 190. Joseph Biden just gave President Trump carte blanche to pardon every J6 hostage, every abortion protester, every conservative victim of the Democrat lawfare machine. These folks will be pardoned within 15 minutes of Trump's inaugural address.
His lips to God's ears.
Yep, can't come soon enough. This one's pretty funny. Barron Trump should get started doing major crimes ASAP. He can get away with 4 years of total mayhem. Oh, Lord. All right. And here's one from Elon. Traditional media is a competitor to X. They cover X negatively because they compete for your advertising dollars.
It's important to bear in mind traditional media is a competitor to Twitter. So they compete for your advertising dollars. They compete against Twitter for your advertising dollars. If it is possible for them to diminish Twitter and reduce the probability of advertising dollars going to Twitter, it's like basically you shouldn't take a competitor's word for it.
So there you have it. That's the end of chapter 2. Quick shout out to the team over at Native Hydrate. There's a link down below. You can get up to 44% off their branched chain amino acid drinks. I was with Dr. Jason Dean today, as I mentioned earlier, recording some content, and he absolutely loves Native Hydrate's product. I love it. Just got an email. I think it was from Travis, one of our guys in Oklahoma, and he said he's been on it for about 4 weeks and can notice the difference. It's a game changer. If you drink sodas and, Coke's full of sugar and you switch over to this BCAA, I'm telling you right now, within 24 hours, you will notice an improvement in your energy level and acuity as well. So I don't know if you want to add anything on the subject of branched chain amino acids, John, but they usually taste like crap. And stuff Hydrate doesn't. So
I've got to try this stuff. I haven't tried it yet. I've been using BCAAs for years, and you're right. They always, even if they're covered up with a flavor of a fruit or something like that, there's always some kind of weird, nasty aftertaste in them. But they are a building block of health and physical fitness. If you're in the gym, you need BCAAs, no doubt about it. And even if you're not, it's just a building block of the human biology.
There's 191 amino acids in human growth hormone. So RFK is going to legalize peptides, which are essentially referred to as research chemicals, but all they are different combinations of those branched chain amino acids that you inject subcutaneously just under the skin. So a good example would be there's one called Frag 176 191. It's the fragments of branched chain amino acids from number 176 to 191, and it's very effective at accelerating your metabolism so that you drop fat, and no side effects to speak of. This.
So CJC 1297 or 1295.
1295
is with epimorlin, one of the most sought after and one of the most effective peptides out there. It's incredible.
So I know lots of people who they despise pins, needles, basically, and I get that. So using like BCAAs in a drink mix, number one, you got to drink something anyways. The majority of Americans are dehydrated. All of your cells are made up out of water, and your brain has got a tremendous amount of water in it. Tons of studies that show when you take the water out of your brain that your cognitive abilities fall off a cliff. So for me, I'm kind of picky when it comes to stuff. I don't want to drink BCAAs that taste like crap at the end of the day.
Agreed.
And so when Dr. Chad, from Native Path contacted us, he sent me like a 2-month supply. I took it for 8 weeks. It was so good. I don't have a discount or anything. I just went and spent, the regular price to stock up on it. And then I gave some to Dr. Jason Dean and made him a believer because he was using a product from another company. It escapes me right now. And something happened with their production. They changed to somewhere else and they put in a whole bunch of stuff that is not good. And so he was kind of lost looking for a BCAA until I gave him the Native Path, Native Hydrate stuff. Anyway, there's a link below. We'll move on from there. So homework wise, we always have homework at the end of our episodes, things that you can do in light of whatever the thing is that we discussed tonight. So first and foremost, y'all probably got the impression General Vallely is a machine. He is a prolific writer, sharp as a tack. I mean, the volume of stuff that he publishes is just mind-blowing. So you can support his Substack here, Stand Up America US Foundation. You can also get his books on there, which is where I got them. He didn't send us his books. I went ahead and bought them because they're actually really high quality. Pardon me. And you can also help by supporting the MacArthur Society, which you heard tonight. These guys are doing great things as far as stomping out what did they say? Wokeness is warfare. I had to write that down because it's really, really good. All right, next thing, stay abreast of international news. So there's a lot of studies that show on average, Americans typically don't consume a lot of international news relative to people in other countries, at least. And if you stay abreast of that, you will have this like crystal ball into what's going to happen here. We've said this before. I'm going to say it again. If you watch in particular, Western Europe, UK, you watch Canada, New Zealand, Australia, whatever they're trying there, meaning the globalists, the NWO, whatever you want to call them, that is a harbinger of things to come here. I'd love to go down the path of that thing that starts with a C that crippled us for a couple of years. Not here in Florida, I might add. I think they're going to see some lawsuits related to that are going to make YouTube and these other platforms force them to tell the truth, or at least let us to tell.
Well, from the health side, we know that Jay Bhattacharya is going to be one of the key people there because he was one of the co-writers of the Barrington Declaration, the Great Barrington Declaration.
Yep. Exactly. So stay abreast of international news. Number 3, endeavor to improve yourself in any way possible. That could be physical health. It could be learning new stuff, acquiring a new skill, whatever the case may be. Myself, I'm very physically active and I like to run and gun and I like to exercise. So I do it all together. That works for me. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You have to find what works for you in particular. Some people want a personal trainer to guide them through stuff. At the end of the day, like I mentioned earlier, you can do exercises at home with bands while you're watching TV. Do it for 10 minutes. Do it 10 minutes a day, 4 or 5 times a week. I'm telling you, in 4 weeks, you will notice a dramatic improvement. Work on, reducing sugar intake. Guess what will happen? Your inflammation will fall off a cliff and you won't feel so much pain. And number 4 on the list is, per usual, and when we're talking, macro topics like we did tonight, stack up on your preps. Make sure you've got lots of food, water, ammunition, medications, etc. And the bottom line is we've had 31% compounded annual inflation on food since this administration was installed. Some people say it's 21%, some people say it's 41%. So we just land in the middle at 31%. There's nothing else out there that you're going to get a 31% compounded annual return on, and you will eat the food eventually. So it's a great investment. Is there anything that you would like to add, John, as far as action items and homework is concerned?
Don't sleep on we've talked about how we hope and we pray that this next 4 years is a good 4 years and we get this thing turned around. However, don't fall asleep at the wheel when things are good. I'll give you an example from the Bible. When Joseph was in Egypt, there's a story in the Old Testament of Joseph where he became the head guy below the prime minister or below the king of the Pharaoh of Egypt. He was basically the prime minister of Egypt. And out of a dream, God had told him that there would be 7 years of plenty and 7 years followed by 7 years of famine. And because of that, what they did in those 7 years is they stored up all of the excess that they had. They didn't waste it. They didn't give it away. They stored it up. And when the famine hit, they were the only country that was prepared. And the entire world, the ancient world, came to Egypt to get food. That's what we have to do when things are good, is we have to prepare, because the pendulum swings back and forth. And I hope that we have curtailed this communism from our shores. And I hope that what happens in the first couple of years of the administration is that it severely cripples it for generations. But the reality is the empire always strikes back. And
True.
Because of that, we need to be prepared for that. And we need to use the time that we have. We may have gotten a short reprieve. We need to be preparing for even worse things, because sometimes it gets even worse. That's all I would add.
No, that's good. Well said. Roy's got a question here. What news source can we trust for international news? I don't have an answer for that. What I can tell you is, myself included and everybody at Survival Dispatch, we consume a massive volume of information on a daily basis across the spectrum. So we'll watch MSNBC, we'll watch InfoWars, we'll read Breitbart, we'll read Russia Today, we'll read Al Jazeera. And it's kind of like a puzzle that you have to put together based on, how things are being spun. I mean, number one, if you see multiple news agencies repeating the same thing, the Mockingbird media, then it's probably not true. It's a pretty strong hint sort of thing. But what I would say to you, Roy, is that there are many people just like us that go and consume all of this news. And when we break it down to a brief, like for tonight's video, we do it for every video. That's kind of like a curated daily newspaper. You can click through the links, read it, watch the entire videos at your own leisure sort of thing. And I think, we're not perfect, but we do a pretty good job of telling the truth, because we don't have a dog in the hunt, right? We don't have Big Pharma paying us millions of dollars to advertise on our channel. So at the end of the day, if you follow people like us and other truth tellers because you don't want to spend the time to consume, ungodly amounts of news, which is perfectly understandable. People have families and jobs. Come watch Survival Dispatch News, listen to Joe Rogan, watch Tucker Carlson. There's a lot of people out there now, just like Elon Musk said, we are the media now. And even though the CEO of Axios had a complete meltdown over it, he's wrong. They are not doing a good job. They've lied too many times. They've cried wolf too many times. And it's all BS. There you go. So even yes, right there, I have an answer. None of them. And it's exactly what I just said. You got to read all these different things and then kind of piece it together for yourself, or you have to find somebody you trust. If you trust Survival Dispatch News, then come and watch content here. We don't have a dog in the hunt. We don't have anything to gain or lose by telling you, there was somebody from Australia here. Check this out. I'll use this as an example. Where'd it go? Somebody from Australia made a post right here. Check this out. 999. Indeed, my local council in Australia has permission to enter our property to check for cats and dogs under the pretext of security, and in reality, control and revenue. So there's an adage that I subscribe to and have for many years. The first thing in life you do is decide what you want. The next thing you do is decide what you're willing to give up to get it. Every time you hear some power hungry politician say something like, if it saves just one life, it's worth it. No, it isn't. So you have you're going to save some Darwin candidate, but the cost of that, you have decided you want to save the Darwin candidate, is that you are giving up civil liberties. It always comes at an expense like that. You know what? If somebody's too stupid, to know that they shouldn't walk on the train tracks, okay, they're going to have to live and die with that decision, but the rest of us shouldn't be punished for it. But what 999 is saying here, that's what I'm trying to get at, is if they're doing this in Australia to our brothers and sisters in Australia, you will see this happen in New Zealand, Canada, Great Britain, Germany, France, etc. And once they've got the recipe cooked up just the way they like it, they'll bring it to California first. And once they ram it down people's throats in California, then they'll try to inflict it upon the rest of us here in America. So I appreciate that comment a lot, but it's a great example of some international news.
Yep. I'll leave it with Benjamin Franklin, who once said, anyone who gives up, and I'm paraphrasing here, anyone who gives up liberty in the name of security gains neither.
So true. So true. So that's kind of interesting because we're at the end. We've got a quick conflicted question, and it kind of speaks to this stuff. The common people don't want war, but after all, it is the leaders of the countries who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it's a democracy or a fascist dictatorship or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them that they're being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country. And that was Hermann Göring from, the Nazis in World War II. So the conflicted question is, why do nation leaders go to war even against their citizens' wishes? What can you do about this? Well, my answer is pretty simple. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when you put people in power, there's no accountability. They have unchecked power. They feed on it, and they want more and more power and more control. They won't back off. It's like they're addicted to heroin or crack cocaine. So absolute power corrupts absolutely. What you can do about it is, at least here in America, is you can expose people who are trying to do this stuff. So you could say the Democrats and the rhinos, want to impose these things. Did you see one of Kamala Harris's policies, for example, was that you need to pay income tax on unrealized capital gains?
Mm-hmm.
So in simple terms, you have a $100,000 piece of property, something happens to the market, and now it's worth $150,000. She wanted you to pay income tax on the $50,000, even though you never got the $50,000. It was never realized. And what happens when the market takes a crap and now it's worth $50,000 or less, like we saw in 2009 sort of thing, right?
Yep.
So what you can do is pay attention to this stuff, watch our channel, watch other channels that you believe in, that you have trust in, and make sure you vote against these shitbags. And we just proved it. So all the people out there said my vote doesn't matter. They're going to cheat no matter what. You know what? They did cheat, but our message was very different this time around than it was in 2020. We didn't say to our viewers, make sure you go to the polls and vote. We know all of our audience, for the most part, vote. We said, take somebody with you who doesn't normally vote. That strategy, and it wasn't from us. We were one of many people singing from the same sheet of paper. That's what made the election too big to rig. Look at Wisconsin in the middle of the night for the presidential race. Donald Trump's curve is like this, and Kamala's curve goes like this, up, just like it did in 2020, like this, but it never exceeded the red line because we made it too big to rig. So your vote does matter, and it pays to pay attention to who you're voting for. Matthew Nugent earlier tonight mentioned Michael Waltz. I'm not going to go off on a complete, rant here, but the guy's a swamp creature. I voted for him twice until he voted for no warrants required for FISA to investigate you and me and spy on us, but you had to have a FISA warrant to spy on Congress. That was, the unacceptable to me. And then I did a little bit more digging and found out that his wife is joined to the hip with the WEF. And now he's going to be Trump's security advisor. That's, Trump's not going to get it all right. There's no question. Your greatest strengths usually your greatest weakness. What's Donald Trump's greatest strength? Bringing people back to the table to cut a deal. Okay. What's his greatest weakness? Putting trust in people like Michael Waltz, or this guy now that he's supposedly nominating to be the head of the DEA. The guy's he's a Florida sheriff who was a complete shitbag. He was pissed off that Ron DeSantis, wasn't locking things down here like other states. He was a big proponent of locking stuff down. He's going to get it wrong as well. He's not going to get everything right. But again, do you want Nikki Haley or do you want Donald Trump?
Yep, agreed. And my answer to this would be, one of the easiest and fastest ways to enrich yourself is warfare of many different kinds. It's the fastest. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire for enrichment of elite people. because
Well
they
said.
run in the same circles as all the people that make the weapons. Don't fool yourself. The money we've been sending to Ukraine is going to come right back to those elites in the form of more equipment that's going to be created and built for our military going forward. So they're getting money on both ends. And, you know, I go back to World War I. That was basically a war of elites, the Habsburg dynasty. And it started with an archduke getting assassinated. And it was a war that was nasty and ugly and brutal. And it was all over a bunch of elites having a disagreement. And it drug on forever. They don't care about the average person. They only want to enrich themselves.
So a great example of your answer, and this is absolutely true, is that FDR's New Deal was not working. It was not pulling us out of the Great Depression. And he knew that the way to get us out of the Great Depression would be to get full-fledged into World War II, convert all of our industrial capacity over to the war effort. But Americans didn't want anything to do with it. And that's why we broke the Japanese code years before they attacked us December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor, right? And we allowed that to happen. His administration allowed that to happen so that we've been attacked. Now let's get everybody on board to fight World War II, European Pacific Theater. And what came out of that? It was the 1950s, where we had unparalleled wealth compared to other countries. Unparalleled. 82% home ownership rates. Average age of a vehicle on the road, 3 years. One person in the family working, one staying at home, still owned their own home, had a new car every 3 years, paid for their kids' education, had nice clothes on their back. That was a direct result of World War II.
Yep. And and it's ironic, the people that actually entered the workforce in that decade, the wealth that was built is unparalleled in any generation after that. Those people became so wealthy by the time they reached their 60s and 70s. A lot of them are millionaires. Easy. Because they built so much wealth. And I would also go in as far as this. There was also somebody that was involved in World War II that understood the dangers of the military-industrial complex, and that was Dwight Eisenhower. His farewell address. He said that. Be aware of the military-industrial complex. It's dangerous, and that's what we're dealing with now.
Oh, 100%. 100%. All right. Well, that was a good one, John. Great guest. Good conversation. Lots going on in the news cycle. We'll be back tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern, like every other night. But until then, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America.
Introducing the Musin Wild Mini, a retro Army-style Bluetooth speaker with superior sound performance. The perfect companion for your next adventure. No matter if you're out for a weekend trip with your friends, or just bring it when you're out alone, Musin Wild Mini is designed to unleash your authentic inner wildness in any place you can imagine. Now you can enjoy music on full blast. Crank up the volume without sacrificing sound quality. The intuitive control makes it very convenient and easy to use. Just control your playlist directly from the speaker through Bluetooth without touching your phone. An included LED light makes it also perfect for night activities or camping. Rugged, powerful, and portable, Musin Wild Mini is not just another toy gadget, but an extremely tough speaker with superior sound performance that fits in the palm of your hand. Using only premium materials, the speaker is designed with a full metal body, ammo boxes structure, and a unique knob shape, satisfying all your illusions of wilderness or military. Musin Wild Mini is a Bluetooth speaker for outdoor lovers. Easy to carry, super sturdy, but not compromising in sound quality. Bid for your Wild Mini now and get ready for your next adventure.